Well, good morning, everybody, and thank you for joining us here on this webinar tonight, Coping with Christmas with Bipolar Disorder. The Christmas period can be really tough if you have bipolar disorder. There's so many obligations, so many events to attend. There's the expectation that you're going to be with people who you may or may not want to be around. A lot of families have conflict in their relationships, and so being forced to have to spend time with people who you don't really want to hang around can really put a strain on relationships. And as you'll see a little bit later, we are going to go through exactly how relationships are so much of a key in staying well bipolar, and especially staying well over the Christmas period. So first up, so Christmas is this time where it's supposed to be a time of joy, and it's supposed to be a time where, if you're a Christian, and at the Soul Foundation and myself personally, we are Christians, we celebrate the birth of Jesus. And so it's supposed to be a time of reflecting on joy and giving and those things. But for so many people, that's just not the reality. And so we want to, in this webinar tonight, I want to help make it a bit more relevant for people who have with bipolar, and actually equip you with some specific skills and strategies and methods you can use to stay well. So first of all, let me tell you a bit about myself. Who am I, and why am I qualified to talk on this topic of coping with Christmas with bipolar disorder? I guess the first thing I have to tell you is I am not an expert. I am not a mental health professional, even though I work for an NDIS provider, and the SALT Foundation are running this webinar tonight. I am not a mental health professional, but the reason I am qualified to speak on this is that I do have lived experience with bipolar. I'm 46 now. When I was 20, I had my first manic episode, and that was when I received my diagnosis of bipolar. Over the next 5 years, I had 4 manic episodes, and those manic episodes all resulted in me having to go to hospital. So I really hated having bipolar, and I hated myself for not being able to be, to be normal, to not be able to be free of this. I didn't want to accept the challenges and the suffering which I was experiencing in my life. So for 17 years after, so after I had an episode in 2001 where I became manic and was hospitalized, I then began researching, because I've always been an avid reader. I always loved books and love to find out different, I love finding out different things about everything. I love reading everything. Anything captures my attention and interest. But when I started studying bipolar seriously, I started to discover that while I was having an episode every 12 months to 18 months, there were other people who had bipolar and who had stayed well and not had a manic or a depressive episode for 5 years, 10 years, 20 years or more. And so I became intensely curious. What are these people doing differently to what I'm doing? I believed that it wasn't luck. My belief was that they must be doing something, they must be taking specific actions that are different to what I was doing. And so with those specific actions in mind, that's what I was searching for. What are they doing? And so as I would come across, and I would read, and I would come across an idea of something that somebody was doing, I would start doing that thing myself, and I would test it out. I tested it out for a period and see what impact that had on my mood and on my stability. And the result of this is that through this research and through testing and applying what I was learning, I was able to use the evidence-based science which I discovered to stay stable with bipolar for 17 years. For 17 years, I didn't have a relapse of mania or depression. And if things had continued normally, if my life had continued with the ordinary amount of distress and challenges and supports in it, then I think I would have been able to continue my streak, if you like, indefinitely. But then I faced some exceptional circumstances. And those exceptional circumstances were, first of all, I broke up, I ended a 5-year relationship, which, as you imagine, that was traumatic. Then within a year of that relationship ending, I became homeless. And then within that same year, my grandmother, who was the person my family member who had the biggest impact on my life and who had been the biggest source of support throughout my life, she died. And so I had those things happen together. And I even think that I would have been able to cope with the relationship breakup and and grieving if I have had somewhere to live. But then at that time, I went through that period where I didn't have anywhere to live, and where I had to make do with what I had. And because I didn't have anywhere to live, and I wasn't able to keep doing those actions which I was talking about. And we're going to get into some of those actions later on in this webinar, but I wasn't able to do those actions that I knew would work to stay stable. In particular, the two big ones that had an impact for me were I wasn't able to have regular sleep and uninterrupted sleep. My sleep was all over the place. I didn't know where I was going to sleep each night. I didn't know what kind of environment I would be in. And sometimes the environments that I was in, whether real or imagined, felt dangerous. The other habit that was critical that I wasn't able to keep going was I wasn't able to keep up my medication routines. And all these strategies which I'm sharing tonight, these depend, that the foundation for these is on on a person with bipolar taking their medication, being reliable and consistent in taking your medication. What I'm going to teach you here tonight is not an excuse for stopping medication or giving up on medication. It's you need, if you have bipolar, you need to take the medication. And I get that meditation, we're talking about meditation later on, but medication can be a bit of a source of frustration in itself, because you deal with aspects like weight gain and um, other impacts that it has on your life, lack of loss of motivation and drive, and with those things gone, then you start to criticize yourself, and you start to wonder, am I a failure? Am I hopeless for not being able to do these things, for not being able to function like a normal person? But that was my experience with being homeless. And as a result of not being able to keep up those regular routines, I experienced my first manic episode in 17 years. And this episode was, led me back into hospital, and I was in hospital for an extended stay. But then, I came out of that, and just to wrap up that story, I've for the last couple of years, I've had somewhere stable to live with great housemates who are incredibly supportive, challenging at times, but that's what you get in any close relationship, is that it's a mix of both support and challenges. But my housemates, have been fantastic. They're supportive of me. They accommodate my needs. And the other big thing which has changed this past year is I've started working for the SALT Foundation. The SALT Foundation has given me the opportunity to be able to take on a challenging role as marketing manager and be responsible for helping the organization grow and for coming up with new initiatives to reach new people. And the organization is a disability services organization. It's an NDIS provider, but the SALT Foundation goes beyond that. Not only is it an NDIS provider, but it's a charity. And through its charitable work, it does things like support a children's home in India, southern India, where over the past decade, we've supported 179 children through that children's home. It also is in the process of starting up a training supermarket in Cambodia. This training supermarket will allow people who are unemployed and don't have any skills to come and live at the supermarket and work and get trained in how to work and run a supermarket. And as a result, they'll then be able to go back into their local communities and get jobs and be able to support their families and contribute economically to the environment in which they're in. The other big thing which SALT focuses on is health and well-being. It's critical for us as an organization. That's what we want to be known for. That's what we want to do, is we want to reach out to people who, because of their circumstances, are not typically able to have fantastic health and well-being, and create opportunities for those people to be able to get the health and well-being and develop the health and well-being which they need. And so addressing that in practical, real-world ways. So that's, I didn't mean to go on to a bit about the SALT Foundation there, but the SALT Foundation has given me an opportunity to work, and this is my second full-time job which I've had in my life. I never thought I would work full-time again, and I never, I thought that my options, my income options were severely capped in life because of that limitation. But SALT has been incredibly supportive and understanding, and it's been a great organization. And because I'm making a difference in the lives of people, I love the work which I get to do for them. Not only do I love the difference I get to make, but the work itself which I'm doing is exactly the kind of work which I've wanted to do, including the opportunities to speak publicly and continue what I started years ago, where as a mental health speaker and as a public speaker, as a personal development speaker, and have those opportunities. So that's enough about me, and that's enough about SALT. Let's jump into the body of the presentation now. Now we're going to talk about 3 social psychotherapies tonight, and I'm going to give you their names, and those names are going to be a bit of a tongue twister, but the reason why I mention them by name is because I know that sometimes people who attend my talks are mental health professionals, or they are students of, like, mental health students, they're psychology students or psychiatry students. And so because of that, I want to make sure that I mention the therapies which I'm developing these methods from, as so that people who have that particular interest will be able to investigate them further if they want to see how they apply to helping people with bipolar. So making it better for everybody. But for everybody else, it's a tongue twister. Just to introduce the 3 of them by name, the first is called interpersonal and social rhythm therapy. That's interpersonal and social rhythm therapy. The second one, and I'm going to introduce them by turn later on. So, and we'll go into a little bit, but just to keep in mind, this presentation is going to be practical. It's not going to be a theoretical presentation where I talk about ideas of what could work. I'm going to be talking about ideas which I've tested in my own life, which I've drawn from these therapies, but I've tested in my own life. So the second one is acceptance and commitment therapy. That was acceptance and commitment therapy. And the third one, which I discovered while I was working on the content for this webinar, is dialectical behavioral therapy. I told you they were tongue twisters. Dialectical behavioral therapy. So those are the 3 terms, 3 therapies that I'm going to be talking about on this webinar tonight, but I'm not going to be talking so much about them, but as specific actions you can take that are developed from them. So just to introduce them though, the first one that I'm going to talk about is interpersonal and social rhythm therapy. Interpersonal and social rhythm therapy was developed in the early 2000s as a approach specifically to help support people with bipolar management. The researchers realized that it has a complicated name, but essentially what it means is relationships and rhythms. That those 2 things are key when it comes to staying well with mental health. Those things are critical to mental health stability, and the researchers tested this out, and they used control groups, and they tested, and they found that people who used interpersonal social, the people who established stable routines, regular rhythms in their life, and developed strong relationships were able to stay well long term. And over the testing period, which was 2 years, those people had a 20% relapse rate. So an 80% rate of people using this therapy staying well over a 2-year period, which if you have bipolar, you might think, wow, that's actually quite incredible, because you might realize that that's quite rare. A lot of people relapse far more frequently than every 2 years. And based on my experience, I certainly think that under the normal everyday challenges of life, that you were able to stay well and stay stable with your bipolar management indefinitely using interpersonal social rhythm therapy. This is the foundational approach which I've used to my own mental health stability since 2003. So what are some general principles from there that are important? So first of all, these are general principles for stable mental health. The first one is managing your moods. Notice what triggers you, notice what sets you off, what makes you uncomfortable, notice what makes you feel good and stable and balanced. Notice those things, and it's really simple. Do more of what works and do less of what doesn't. That is the advice, and it's certainly easy to wrap your head around. It's quite challenging to practice, however, in the real world. So we're going to talk, as we talk more, we'll talk about the challenges and how you can expect to be able to use these things to be able to, these tools which I'm giving you to help you manage your mood and notice what is and what isn't working for you. The second general principle is to make healthful choices. By this, I mean make choices which are going to put you in the best spot moving forward. We've already spoken about medication. That's one helpful choice. The other helpful choice is exercising. Yeah, make sure you're getting exercise. It's not rocket science here, but there's so much research that shows that exercise is beneficial for your mental health. Whether you have a mental illness or don't have a mental illness, having regular exercise is just crucial. It's an essential part of life. The other essential part of life is eating well. It's okay to eat junk food occasionally. It's okay to occasionally pig out, if you like, and go through a tub of ice cream or go through a packet of biscuits or packet of chips, like a big packet of chips I'm talking here. I'm not talking about any of these little wimpy little small packets. I'm talking about those big, party-sized packs. So make healthful choices when it comes to the choices that you're making in life. The next general principle, which I've touched on a little bit, is keep regular schedules. Once you start employing regular schedules, you'll get to know what has the impact on your mental health and what doesn't. It's different for each person, but there are a couple of critical ones which key for everybody, and of those, sleep is the most important. Go to bed, if possible, at the same time each night. Go and get up at the same time each day. I'm generally pretty good at going to bed on time each night, but depending on how I sleep affects how well I do at getting up in the morning. I certainly would prefer to stay in bed for the morning, and if I've got a lot on that day and don't want to face the day, some days I just want to stay in bed the whole day. I'm sure you may be able to relate to that, perhaps. The next general principle for well-being bipolar, and these things apply, and I say general because they apply not just during Christmas, but at any time of year, but they're particularly relevant during Christmas, is schedule time for fun. What do you find fun? What you find fun obviously is different to what other people find fun. I mean, there are general things. Some people like movies, some people like Netflix or reading or music or dancing. But whatever you find fun, make sure you make time to do it. It's really simple. Nothing I'm going to say here on this webinar tonight is going to make you go, wow, you need an advanced degree to understand that or to come to that conclusion. It's all basic stuff, because these habits of good mental health are all basic things. Now, the other general principle of good mental health is the ABC method. So the A stands for accept, and you're going to see this word come up over and over, or you're going to hear it rather, come up over and over again throughout this webinar. You're going to hear it come up over and over again because it's critical to having that success with your mental health long term. So accept is, acceptance is not about, well, what it is about just welcoming whatever's going, whatever's happening. And I mean, welcome doesn't mean you need to like it. Welcome means you need to, but welcome does mean that you don't try and change what is happening. So if you're feeling bad, you don't try and change you feeling bad. Instead, you learn, and we're going to go into this in a bit more depth later, but you don't try and change feeling bad. Instead, you simply do what you simply accept it. You make the space to go, okay, I'm feeling this way, and that's okay to feel this way. It's okay to feel bad today. It's okay to feel sad. It's okay to feel happy. It's okay to want to laugh. It's okay to be playful. Whatever, some in New Age philosophy, they often label emotions as negative and positive, and I don't think that's helpful. All emotions are part of our human experience. All emotions have a valid role to play in what we do. If you think about it from evolutionary terms, emotions wouldn't have continued to exist if they didn't serve a function in our lives as humans. So I think all emotions play a part. So acceptance is about accepting all the emotions that we feel, regardless of whether they are good or bad, however we choose to label them. We just welcome them and accept them as they are, and we're present with them. Excuse me. The next step is to believe, and that is the B here, to believe, is to believe that change is possible, to believe that you can get different results. And even if you've had a history of instability through your mental health journey, that through learning techniques from people who have stayed well and stayed stable long term, and learning what science says works in staying stable as you manage your bipolar, that you can learn to stay stable yourself. And just here as a caveat, I'm not saying that every episode of bipolar is preventable, or that you're going to be able to, once you learn how to do these things, that you'll be able to stay well for the rest of your life. But I am telling you that if you do these things, it's going to put you in the best spot. It's going to position you in the best way so that your bipolar has the least impact on your life as it's going to have. And the third thing here is to challenge is to challenge your thinking, and this might, when I say challenge your thinking, what I'm talking about here is I'm not talking about challenging emotions. We spoke before about accepting your emotions and not trying to change your emotions, but we do want to change our thinking when our thinking is unhelpful, when our thinking doesn't serve us. And we want to challenge our thinking when we're thinking things like, I can't do this because my bipolar won't let me. I can't be a good friend because my bipolar makes me selfish. I can't be a I can't be a good parent because my bipolar means that I'm going to let my kids down, especially at Christmas time, because the distress is going to get to me. I'm going to be overwhelmed. So that's the ABC method. Now, the one of the key components of acceptance, wrong therapy. One of the key components of interpersonal and social rhythm therapy is having set routines. Now, when I first discovered interpersonal and social rhythm therapy, what I found was the PowerPoint slides that the researcher, Ellen Frank, and her team had presented to a psychiatric conference or a psychological conference. That was all I had, was their slides to base my practice that I developed on staying well. Later, the presentation they did was turned into a paper that was published in a journal article, which went on to become, and now 20 years later, we have quite a track record to prove that interpersonal social rhythm therapy is incredibly effective when it comes to staying well, to helping people manage their bipolar and stay stable. And of course, the core component, the social rhythm part, is having those regular routines. And those regular routines benefit you in a number of ways when you're testing what works and what has an impact on your mental health. When you're looking at what's going to make a difference for you, having routines allows you to test new ideas out and see what impact they have in a stable or steady environment, rather than it being in this environment where you're just making things up as you go along, and so you can't really tell. So does meditating for 20 minutes a day make a difference to my mood or not? I can't tell, because I meditate at a different time each day, and I get up, I go to work at different times, I go to bed at different times. So one of the benefits of going to of having steady routines is that those routines allow you to those routines allow you to test new methods, new actions you can take, and see what impact they have on your mental health. Other benefits of routines is they give you a framework for your life where you get to know, we spoke earlier about how doing more of what works for you with staying well and doing less of what doesn't work. Now, when you establish routines, you can set up your routine so that you can do more of what works, so that you can eliminate what doesn't work, so that you can make sure that you're getting all those areas that we spoke about previously, such as having fun and making time for renewal and making time for your friends and all those kind of things that are important. Those are the kind of things which you can schedule in as routines. But of course, there are challenges to routines, and especially there are challenges that I want to talk about with Christmas time. The challenges, for example, are you may be traveling. You may not be traveling too far because we're still experiencing the impact of this pandemic on our world, but you may be traveling, and you may be traveling on. You might be catching you might be traveling at times when would normally be asleep, or you might be because of your new environment, because you're visiting family, you may find that your family have a different idea of when to go to bed and a different time of when to get up than you do. You may find that you have nieces or nephews who want to play with you and keep you up, and they're good things, but it has it can impact your routines. And so these challenges can come up, and these challenges can come up when it comes to your routines, especially during the holidays. And we just to re-emphasize the critical routine which you want to focus on during the holidays is your sleep. If at all possible, go to bed at the same time each night. And to help you get a good night's sleep, in the hour before you go to bed, stay off your screens. Don't go on your phone. Don't go on a computer. Don't watch the TV. In that last hour before bed, the best thing which you can do, there's two best things you can do. I'm going to give you two best things here, which kind of defeats the idea of best, because best is an absolute term, but ignore that. Two good things you could do here in that hour before bed. One of them is to keep a handwritten paper journal. And journaling, there are benefits to journaling. I'm not going to go into that today, but there are so many benefits to journaling. And doing that is a good thing to do in that last hour before bed. The other thing which is really good to do in the last hour before bed is to read fiction. It's better to read fiction in that last hour to bed before bed, rather than reading nonfiction, because nonfiction stimulates your learning and gets you thinking about what you want to learn and gets your thoughts racing, whereas fiction helps you engage with stories and connect with stories and help prepare you to dream and to think of, as you're asleep. So it helps prepare you for sleep. And then the next area of interpersonal and social rhythm therapy is having strong relationships. Relationships are key to having stable mental health. The good relationships provide you with a robust support network. And I don't like using that term support network when applied to friendships, relationships, because I find that it actually highlights what is a problem that often gets in the way of people with bipolar being able to develop strong relationships, is that people with bipolar make the relationship about them and their needs, rather than it being a two-way street where each person is interested in giving to the other person and supporting the other person. I think that there's no doubt about it that having strong relationships is there, but if your focus is on yourself, you're not going to have strong relationships, and you're not going to get the benefit of those relationships, and you're not going to have a support network. Now, how do you form those strong relationships? Well, I want to introduce you to a concept called the 5 love languages. The 5 love languages comes from the book of that name by Gary Chapman. And the 5 love languages introduces this idea that everybody experiences love in different ways. There are 5 different ways that people give and receive love, can give and receive love. And if you want to feel loved, then you need to have people express love to you in your love language, in your primary or your secondary love language. and if you want to make other people feel loved, then you need to consider what their love languages are and what makes them feel loved. So let's walk through these 5 love languages. The first love language is touch. And Alistair, did you have a question? Yeah. Sorry, let me come back to here. Did you have a question, Alistair? I don't know if sorry, I saw Alistair, if you have a question, can you write it in the question and answer box? Oh, there we go. No, that was no question. Sorry. So I saw a hand go up there, and I'm like, oh, this is great. Someone's put their hand up with a question, and it wasn't a question, so that's okay. Someone was just playing with the features in the Zoom meeting. So the 5 love languages. The first love language is touch. People who love touch are the huggers. People who love touch they're the people who you know they'll hug you. They'll put their hand, they'll rest their hand on your shoulder, and they'll tap you, and those are the people who love is their love language. The next love language is words, and words of affirmation. Some people respond really well when you compliment them, when you use words to express your appreciation for them. And when someone has words of affirmation as their love language, as their main love language, it's not just the words you say. You can say the right thing, but it's also critical that you use the right tone. If you don't use the right tone, then people get hurt, and people get offended, and people if words of affirmation is their love language. Words of affirmation is not my love language, so I'm not, if I might think people are off. I might want to check in if people use a tone which seems unusual, but it's not going to make me feel unloved. The next love language is quality time. And quality time for people who this is their main love language means that you spend time with them, where you're present with them, where you're not distracted by devices, where you're not distracted by screens, where the two of you can just sit down and be there with each other. It doesn't mean you need to spend the whole time talking, but being able to be there and just pass time and spend time with each other as you go through life means that you get to have those you get to have that critical time. And that's how people who quality time is their love language give and receive love. And the fourth love language is gifts. Some people love to receive gifts, and if you give them a gift, they will feel so appreciated and so loved and so connected. Again, I'm not a gifts person. You can buy me the most expensive gift in the world, and I'll be like, oh, it was nice of you to think of me, and then I'll go and I'll put it on my shelf or wherever I would put it, and I wouldn't really think of it again, unless it's a book. I love books. Exception here for books. The other thing about the love language of gifts is it's not just that the gifts are expensive. The amount you pay for the gift isn't as important as the thought that you put into the gift. People who have gifts as their love language really want you to demonstrate your thoughtfulness through the cards that you get them, or the gifts that you get them. Now, the final love language is acts of service. And when people have acts of service as their main love language, They show their love by doing things for other people. These are the people who always do the dishes, who always clean up the kitchen and do the housework. And these are the people who will come over and, mow your lawn for you or wash your car. These are people who have acts of service as their love languages. So, and the really interesting thing to understand when it comes to the love languages is that if you're unaware of the love languages, you tend to express love toward other people in your own main two love languages. So while the way you're trying to love other people would make you feel loved, it actually doesn't make the other person feel loved if they don't share those two love languages. So it's really critical in building strong relationships that you learn and think about what are this person's top two love languages and how can I communicate love, like what do I have to do to show them love through these love languages? Now, the next question, which really helps for strong, healthy relationships, is the question, how can I help you? This is my go-to question when I've had a bad day and I want support. I ring a friend, but rather than talking about my problems and talking about the support that I need, I ring my friend and I have a chat, we'll do the small talk, and then I'll say, oh, I was just calling, I just wanted to know, how can I help you? And by directing that focus to the other person, and then they'll tell me what they need and I'm able to help them with something, then that allows me to feel better about myself, because instead of wallowing in my problems, I've actually done something which has been focused on other people. And of course, people, when you start by being directed toward other people, then other people will give back to you by making sure that you have the space to feel supported and loved yourself. Now we're moving on to the second of these psychosocial therapies, which we're forming the basis of the methods that we're developing tonight. And this one is acceptance and commitment therapy. Now, we've spoken a little bit about acceptance, and we're going to just recap here in the areas that okay, let's jump them out of order. Okay. Okay, I'm going to just swap here. Sorry, there we go. Okay, sorry about that. My notes are out of order. So they're still out of order. Hang on. Okay. So explaining acceptance commitment therapy in a practical way so people can help us. The first part of it is about, these are coming out backward. Okay, my presentation is back to front. I hope you can see that whole, can you just give me a, can someone give me a number one there if you can see on my screen acceptance, values, and actions? Just yep, thank you. Okay, that's okay, yeah, because my notes are out of order, which is not going to help, but that's okay. We will adapt as we go along. This is what practicing acceptance in the moment of the presentation where I'm talking about acceptance. So the first part about acceptance is about taking acceptance is about accepting what happens. It's about accepting how you feel. It's about accepting what's going on. And rather than trying to change how you feel, it's about going, okay, I'm going to be present. I'm going to accept how I'm feeling. I'm going to accept how this is making me feel and just sit with it and allow it to be, and just allow those feelings to be present. The second part of acceptance commitment therapy is related to values. And values, in the sense which acceptance commitment therapy uses them, or ACT, as ACT is how you can call that for short. Values are governing beliefs. These are standards that you set for yourself that help you determine the kind of person you would be if you were being your ideal person in every moment. So the next part is action. And once you know your values, it's not enough just to know your values and be able to choose your values in the moment, but you need to actually be able to act based on those values, and to act in a way that helps you to achieve your goals and your purposes in life. So let's move down here and let's talk about what are values. We've mentioned values are these standards that you have, these governing beliefs. If you have a belief for honesty, then if you value honesty, then, and that governs your life, then you will always tell the truth. You'll have a belief that says, I will always tell the truth. I have a value on integrity, which means wholeness. And because I have a value on integrity, I can't say I have a value on honesty, because there was one time there when I was caring for my grandmother and she needed to move into a nursing home, we lied to her because she never wanted to go into a nursing home, and we told her that she was going into a hospital, and when she got better, she'd be able to come home. And so, you know, I'm a liar, and so I can't say I have a value on honesty when that's what I do. But I do have a value on integrity. I do have a value on wholeness, and so, you know, you want to think through the values that you choose and identify. So you go, how can I use, am I going to be able to live up to this standard? Is this a standard I could live up to? Even, like, it doesn't need to be a standard you live up to every moment, but is this a standard which is achievable and attainable most of the time for you, because it's important to you? And the thing you want to do is define your values in terms of actions which demonstrate those values. Now, the important thing about translating your values into actions is consistency. If you want people to think of you in a certain way, it's not going to make much of a difference if you occasionally do something out of character. Where it becomes a problem is, well, where people are going to form their opinion is what you consistently do, what you do each time you're speaking, or each time you're there. And so and the other thing with actions is that you want to act as if you are already like you already have that value in your life, and that's how you create these values. And we're going to look at 3 examples of values, different values that you can have that relate to Christmas, especially. One of those is being patient. A lot of people know that patience is a virtue, and we want to be patient. And if that's something that is important to you, then I can guarantee that you're going to get tested, and you're going to have people who are going to frustrate you and annoy you and irritate you and are rude and going to rush you and try and get the exact opposite response from you than this patience, which you say is important to you. But the thing is to go through the 3 steps of ACT and identify those things and go, okay, I'm feeling frustrated in this moment, but my value is patience. I value patience. So even though I want to snap at this person and be irritable with this person, I am going to choose to act in a way that's consistent with my values. And instead of snapping at this person, I'm going to respond to them calmly, and I'm going to, I'm going to be calm and gentle and loving to them. Another example is thoughtfulness. Now, when you're around the Christmas table, let's imagine that you tidy up when everybody's finished eating Christmas lunch, you're the one who clears away the table and puts all the dishes in the kitchen and then washes the dishes. And then nobody in your family says anything. Nobody says, wow, good job. And that can be a real slap in the face, especially if you value thoughtfulness, because you're like, I thought I was being thoughtful. And no one's even noticed it. No one has said anything about me being thoughtful. No one has given me any feedback here to know I've done the right thing. Did I do the right thing even? Now, this a little bit goes back to what we were talking about with the love languages, is that if you've done something like clearing away the table and washing the dishes, then your primary love language is probably acts of service. But if nobody else in your family shares that love language, then they're not going to feel loved by you doing that. And so thoughtfulness involves identifying what love languages make a difference in the terms of the lives of other people. In terms of the people you're dealing with, what love language will make them feel loved is how you show your thoughtfulness. And if you define thoughtfulness in that way, well, then you go, okay, well, I need to think about those love languages. I need to think about what's going to make that difference in people's lives. And so yeah, continuing on with that example, that's my little digression there, but continuing on with that example of thoughtfulness. So your family don't respond when you do something wonderful to them. Now that can be frustrating, it can be annoying, it can anger you. And you can practice acceptance and commitment therapy. You can practice ACT, and you can accept those feelings. You can accept that you feel frustrated. You can accept that you feel hurt. You can accept that you feel angry. But simply having the feelings doesn't mean you need to behave in a way that is consistent with the feelings. Instead of behaving in a way that's consistent with the feelings, you can choose to behave in a way that's consistent with your values. And that's what the heart of what ACT is about. And so you choose your value of thoughtfulness and go, okay, I do value thoughtfulness, and I'm going to recommit to thoughtfulness. And then you choose to be thoughtful, you choose to continue to be thoughtful and act in that way, and act thoughtfully as you go through the rest of your time. The other, the last example I wanted to use, if you have a value on being funny. Now, this is something I have a value on being funny, and I think if you're younger, this can be a real hard area. If you value being funny and humor, if you're young and you don't have a good sense of what's appropriate for individual people, then humor is an acquired skill. You got to practice it over time to get a good sense of when it's appropriate to tell certain jokes and joke around, and when it's appropriate to be serious. And if you're making a joke and someone reacts the wrong way, they don't laugh, they don't respond, they get annoyed at you, they snap at you, that could be hurtful to you. And again, same 3-step process. Accept those feelings, allow yourself to feel the annoyance, allow yourself to feel the surprise, the embarrassment. Then choose your value of humor, and then and then consider what action you can take that's aligned with being funny. And it might be that you go, okay, I am not going to I'm not going to tell any more jokes right now because it's not appropriate, but I'm going to, I'm going to go find some. This person likes elephants. My mother or my sister or whatever. She likes elephants, so I'm going to go and find some elephant jokes. If she likes elephants, make sure they're the kind that an elephant lover is going to like. But you can go away and you can plan ahead and you can take actions that are still going to allow you to be funny, but are going to they're a little bit more challenging than usual. And I have one more tip which I found incredibly helpful when it comes to taking actions that support you and actions that are consistent with your values, and that is to plan the day ahead. As you're in that last hour before bed, or as you're lying down and going to sleep, think through what's going to happen the next day. Are you going to be eating Christmas lunch? Are you going to be sitting next to your sister who you don't like very much? Are you going to be, any of these things? Are these things going to be part of your experience? And if you're going to experience those things where you can actually choose in advance how you're going to respond, and if you choose in advance how you're going to respond, then you can automatically act the next day without having to go through this whole 3-step process. And you can actually just go, accept your emotions and go straight into the action, or even just go straight into the action when you get that trigger because you've already planned for it and said, this is what I'm going to do. So now the next, there we go. Okay. Okay. So then the final psychosocial approach, which I want to draw practical techniques you can use this Christmas from to cope with the holidays, is dialectical behavioral therapy, which I'm simply going to call DBT because it's too much of a tongue twister for me. I got it wrong the first time I said it tonight, and I got through it that time, but let's not push our luck. So DBT is an approach that was developed for borderline personality disorder. Lots of tongue twisters tonight. But it has been shown to be effective in mood disorders. So it is helpful with bipolar disorder. And the 4 components of DBT are, first of all, mindfulness, which we've touched on a little bit before when we're spoken about acceptance. We're going to expand on that now. The next part of it is distress tolerance, and we're going to talk about that as well. What we're not going to talk about, because we've already touched upon them, emotional regulation and interpersonal skills, like interpersonal, being able to manage things, being able to have strong relationships. But let's talk about mindfulness. So mindfulness is a key part of acceptance commitment therapy, because mindfulness is the practice which allows you to practice acceptance, and it is the main way that you go about developing mindfulness and making it a regular part of your life is through practicing mindfulness meditation. And mindfulness meditation is simply sitting in a comfortable position and making time to focus on your breath as it goes in and out, and not try and stop your thinking, but to simply focus on your breath. And if you do start to think, then simply come back to your breath and just keep coming back to your breath. And as you meditate more frequently and over a longer period of time, you'll eventually be able to stay on your breath for longer without getting sidetracked by thoughts as often. And I'm going to make it really simple to develop a mindfulness meditation habit. And I recommend this especially at Christmas time, this is a great make your New Year's resolution to develop a mindfulness meditation habit, and do it early. Don't wait till the new year. I know we're not far from the new year, but don't wait till the new year to start. This will help you during the Christmas holidays, like during Christmas time and then into the new year. And that is download the Headspace app. Get the Headspace app, which is available on iPhones. It's available on Androids, and it has free meditations, but it also has paid meditations as well. And I think it's worth the subscription. The subscription's only about $20 a month if you do it monthly, and I think that's perfectly reasonable for it. In fact, I got so much benefit from it that even when during that time I was homeless, I still paid for a Headspace subscription because it had such a big impact on my mental health. Now let's talk about distress tolerance. So it's typical in our culture to talk about stress and to talk about it in negative terms and talk about stress as a bad thing. But stress is simply the psychological and physiological responses your body undergoes in response to change. Stress is not bad or good. Stress is a neutral term. It's like money. Money is a neutral term. Money isn't bad or good. It's what you do with money that makes it bad or good. So there are two words. There is a word that describes good stress, and there is a word that describes bad stress. The word that describes good stress is eustress, and this is the kind of stress that you get when you're pursuing a goal which is challenging, but you're also rewarding, and because it's aligned with your values and this goal is important to you, you'll push yourself harder. I experience eustress every day as I work for the SALT Foundation because it's a demanding role. I have a lot of responsibility and I have a lot of work, and I want to make difference in the lives of a lot of people. And I feel that pressure, but it's pressure. It's not a bad thing. Bad stress, what we usually mean when we say stress is actually distress. And DBT is about developing distress tolerance, actually helping you build your distress tolerance and actually become somebody who is able to handle their distress in more way. Again, it comes. One of the core components of this is accepting that it's okay to feel bad. It's okay to feel overwhelmed. It's okay to feel whatever you're feeling. Whatever you're feeling, it's okay. Allow yourself to feel it. It has a place. The next thing which helps you build your ability to handle distress and to bounce back from it is to make sure you practice your self-care. We've spoken about your sleep and your routines and making healthful choices. All of these things can make a difference for you in distress tolerance. Doing things like showering and shaving and grooming and getting dressed and eating, eating well can all help you give you stronger muscles so that you can handle distress when it comes and you tolerate it more easily. And the final part I'm going to talk about with distress tolerance is problem solving. And this is developing the skills to make your problems that you face manageable. Break them down from big, overwhelming problems into manageable steps. Break them down, as far as into a smaller chunk as you need to go, that you can actually take action on them as you are working, as you're working towards solving those problems. So, as I come to a conclusion, I just want to summarize the three areas we've looked at tonight. We've looked at interpersonal social rhythm therapy, which is about how to establish routines for yourself that support your mental health and how to develop strong relationships. We've also spoken about acceptance and commitment therapy and how that helps you to accept your feelings, whether they're traditionally labeled negative or positive, but simply to accept them and allow them. And then we've looked at identifying your values and knowing what's important to you and what you stand for, and choosing to choosing to act in a way that's aligned with your values rather than acting in a way that's aligned with your feelings. And finally, we looked at dialectical behavioral, done it again. We finally looked at dialectical behavioral therapy, or DBT. And and here we looked at mindfulness meditation and how that forms the foundation for a practice of acceptance. And we also looked at distress tolerance and how to build your distress tolerance so that you can cope with distress as you experience it through the holidays. Finally, I want to just close. I want to thank you for being here with me tonight. I want to thank you for the people who attended the webinar on Zoom. I also want to thank the people who are watching on Facebook. Obviously, we're streaming live on Facebook, so I appreciate people who are watching there. And I just want to let you know that in the new year, we're planning on doing, the SALT Foundation is planning on partnering with with Bipolar Life, which is the peak body for living with bipolar in Victoria. And we want to partner with them and help. We're going to run a series of webinar courses on living skills with bipolar. So stick around. In the new year. You'll get an email about those when they're happening, and you're welcome to come and join them and participate again. It'd be great to have you there. And on that note, I'll wish you a Merry Christmas. I hope that the skills you've learned tonight, you use these skills, and you're going to get the recording, so you'll be able to review it. And if also the other thing, I forgot one last thing. If you want to get the show notes, drop your name in the comments so I know, and I will follow up and I'll make sure you get a copy of the show notes so that you get the notes which I've used, so that you're able to, and so I haven't just got this mind map, which is this colored chart you've been watching me present from. I also have a 4,000 word document, which goes into everything which I've covered here today. So if you would like to learn more about any of these things, then please drop your name in the chat and I'll get that to you. And if you're on Facebook, you can drop your name in the comments. Or if you're on YouTube, wherever you are, I'm going to make sure that this is available to you if you want it. Thank you very much for your time. Merry Christmas, Happy New Year, and I look forward to seeing you in 2022.